Yeah, I forgot. Okay. So the attractiveness of average features does not seem to generalize well to perceptions of bodies. It does not seem to be true that people are most attracted to those of average weight, height, muscle mass, and breast and hip size. So what we're looking for. I was looking at, what is that lady's name? She's in Kill Bill. She's a lady that chops everybody into hamburger.
Emma.
Wait a minute. What is her name? If you've ever actually seen...
Right, I can't remember her name.
Her face is kind of interesting looking. I'm sorry? Uma Thurman. Her face is really interesting looking, but if you look at her body is really oddly proportioned. She's got really long legs. She's got a short torso. You know, what's going on here? Why is this woman so popular? And obviously it doesn't have anything to do with her body. It has to do with her face. That her face is, and her nose is kind of long, which is kind of curious. Really kind of interesting. So we have some really interesting people out there that are popular actors and actresses. And maybe it has something to do with their body proportions. Why is the Kardashian chick? What's her name? Kim Kardashian. Why is she so popular? She's got the biggest butt in the world, doesn't she? And Jennifer Lopez. Okay, she's got a huge derriere. Not huge. I mean, it's not like but it's, it's big. It's relatively big. So what in the world? Why is she so popular? She has a very attractive face, and then she has all these interesting proportions. Elizabeth Taylor had a very attractive face. People talked about the color of her eyes. She had lavender eyes. She had purple eyes. But she was large-chested. Is that why she was so popular? And I mentioned Dolly Parton last time. Is it because of her hair and her voice that she's got this little girl's voice? Is that why everybody is so enamored with Dolly Parton? No, it's probably other proportions, other body. She's only like 4'11". She's a real tiny little thing, but she's got just a massive chest. Maybe that has something to do with it. So attractiveness, as far as the facial expression, facial features are concerned, the more average, the more attractive. As far as the body proportions are concerned, it's not average. We're not looking for average. The kinds of bodies that tend to be seen as most attractive are often those that depart considerably from the average. Men with large pecs, with tight abs, with large deltoid muscles, with large trapezius muscles. We're looking at arms a lot, so we're looking at biceps. We're looking at different proportions. And of course, women are the same way. A woman with average body proportions, not seen as attractive as an individual with extreme body proportions, like Jennifer Lopez, Kim Kardashian, and some of the Dolly Parton and Elizabeth Taylor. But it's not the same way all over the world. If we go to Japan and we look at women and try to determine what they find attractive, they find Western women with large chests, they find them grotesque. They think of them as grotesque. Trying to think what they refer to women with large chests. They've got an insulting term that they use for them. But if we look at Japanese women, of course, we're looking at small body proportions. We're looking at tiny little mouths. For some reason, that is considered attractive in Japan. We're looking at relatively short, relatively petite individuals. Really kind of interesting. However, if we wander over to Africa and look at some of the countries in Africa, they find and especially in West Africa, Nigeria, along the Gold Coast, they find that fat is often viewed as complimentary term. Of course, if we use that term in the United States, we get slapped in the face. But in Africa, of course, they see fat as an indication of strength and beauty. So the pudgier you are, and of course, if you read McCall Smith wrote about Botswana, which is down in South Africa, but he talks about women of traditional proportions, meaning relatively large. These individuals are considered more attractive than the slender individuals. That's one of the reasons why if you wander over to Ethiopia or Somalia where the people are tall and slender, those women, their proportions are much better with the Western world than the rest of Africa does. And of course they see them in other parts of Africa as they look like they're starving to death because they're so slender. But of course in West Africa, most of the individuals are, they see fat as larger proportion as attractive. Now, where did most of the slaves that came into the United States, where did they come from? It's one of the things nobody ever thinks about. Where did these people come from? Where in the world did they ship all these dudes over from, and these ladies?
Africa.
They did come from Africa, but what part of Africa? Did they come from the skinny people? Did they enslave pygmies? Where did these people come from?
I don't know.
Kenya's in East Africa. Okay. Ethiopia's in East Africa. They all came from West Africa. Now remember, West Africans feel that the larger you are, the larger proportion you are, the more strength you show, and the more attractive you are. So for that reason, a lot of the African American women in the United States who have ancestry from West Africa are a larger proportion. And for that reason, if we go into the African American community in the United States, they're looking for baby with baby got back. They want baby to have back. What does that mean? I know what it means. I hope you guys know what it means. What they're looking for they're looking for women with larger proportions. They find skinny ugly or not as attractive. Let me say that. So of course, would they be attracted to a white female with her interesting proportions? And the answer is potentially no, unless she were larger proportion like a West African is. So within the United States, African Americans have heavier ideal body weights than the European Americans, and they feel less social pressure toward thinness. Really kind of interesting when I was living in Mississippi, because a lot of the individuals had not moved away from where they were enslaved, as interesting as that is. So I was living in East Mississippi, and East Mississippi got slaves from a select area, but the people down on the Delta, and the Delta is over in West Mississippi, along the Mississippi River, those individuals were a lot larger, and they were also a lot darker, which was kind of curious. And the reason they were darker is because there was very little mixing with the white population. The people that lived in eastern Mississippi, they were lighter complexion. They were smaller than the people that lived on the west. Now the interesting thing was that football teams, college football teams and whatnot, would go over to the Mississippi Delta looking for linemen because these were big people. They're like Samoans. You know, Samoans are relatively large individuals. When they're small, they weigh in the 250-pound range. So finding a 300-pound Samoan is not that rare. Well, it's the same way in the Mississippi Delta. We found a lot of very large individuals, full-bodied individuals with some body weight, and of course, for that reason, the football teams were looking for them. So the African Americans don't appreciate thinness nearly as much as European Americans do. So when we're talking about attractiveness, we're talking about different groups. Now, of course, this is I'm stereotyping, and this is in general, but there are some very relatively slender African Americans. There are some relatively short African Americans. But the reality is, if we go over to Africa, we find some very large populations, and we see some very small populations. As a matter of fact, of course, the pygmies are relatively short individuals. These individuals, they average around 4-foot range, up to 4.5 feet range. If they have somebody that's 4'8", it's a tall guy. Another aspect of interpersonal attraction is a propinquity effect. People are more likely to become friends with people with whom they frequently interact. And of course, we talked about this last time. The closer you are to people, then the more likely you are to be friends, just like the people in this room. You probably feel a closeness to the individuals because you've gone through the same class, where you've talked in class, and you feel a closeness to the individuals in the class. So more so than somebody from the last class that you'd never met before. You probably feel closer to these people than you do to those people. And actually, this is where I stopped last time. Researchers looked at friendship patterns that developed in police academies. All it had to do was with who you stood beside, who you sat beside during the academy, as to who your friends were. So the people that you're closest to are more likely to be your friends than somebody sitting on the other side of the room. And for that reason, of course, if you've ever seen the movie Remember the Titans, a movie about segregation in Virginia, and then integration, a forced integration on these select individuals. They made friends and a football team out of a group of individuals that didn't like each other by putting them with each other. If you remember, right at the beginning of the movie, when they went to summer camp, they forced a African American football player to room with a white football player. And because of propinquity, because of the mere fact that they were just near these individuals, they became friends and they learned how to live together. Whereas, of course, with segregation, you didn't really have to live with anybody else. You didn't have to interact with them at all. So propinquity is huge. It's really quite amazing. When I was in basic training, of course, I had because I'd been to college, but I hadn't really been that close to people. Here I am in a dorm room with 60 other guys, and we're all in the same room. We were really close to each other. And of course, if you were somebody who had never been around an African American before, or a Japanese American, or an Asian American of one ilk or another, or Hispanic, now suddenly you saw that these individuals were very much like you, and of course they became your fast friends. And this is actually where I was. One reason that the propinquity effect works is because of a phenomenon known as the Mereexposure effect. The more we are exposed to a stimulus, the more that we are attracted to it. I talked about music last time. This has been shown to be true for attraction to other people, foreign words, music, and a variety of inanimate stimuli. So if you've never been around anime, if you've never watched that type of movies, or you've read those types of cartoons, the mere exposure to these things can make you like them, as strange and interesting as that is. Do you guys need some more candy? These guys aren't eating any. So. You don't have to, okay? You can have one if you want. I'm not trying to force candy on you. That's what I have left over from Halloween. The Mereexposure effect appears to be a cultural universal. Japanese and Americans appear to be equally likely to come to like those people with whom they interact most frequently, and that's according to Heine and Renshaw. Of course, Heine is the author of your text. People tend to be attracted to those who are most like themselves, and this is known as similarity attraction effect. We talked about opposites attracting last time. The reality is what you were attracted to was not the fact that they were different. It was the things that were more similar. That's what drew you together. Otherwise, you don't have anything to talk about. You really don't have anything to talk about because you can't agree on it. Opposites really don't attract that much. Much research has shown that people are more likely to view someone as attractive either as a potential friend or romantic partner if both are similar in their attitudes or economic background, their personality, their religion, their social background, and their activities, and up to the extent of the color of their hair. Blondes very rarely marry people with black hair. And if you see somebody, I know, this is really kind of bizarre. So if you look at wedding photos, the women's hair and the men's hair is almost always the same color. And even if it's not the same color, she probably dyes her hair. So her hair is probably really the same color as his. This is really kind of bizarre. So we marry people that look like us, as strange as that may seem. And if we look at this isn't a brother and sister pair. These are people that are married. You can see how close their hair color is. As strange as that may seem. So when my dad married my mom, he had blonde, kind of blondish, brownish hair. And my mom had brown hair with a red tint to it. So their hair was very, very close. Then my dad went off to war. I mean, he went off to war like 3 weeks after they got married. And when he came back, his hair was black. A lot of people, when they went off, when they go off to war, their hair, because of the fear factor, their hair turns white. But my dad's hair turned black because of all the testosterone that was splashing through his system because he was in dangerous situations over and over and over again. And because of that, his beard got heavy, his hair turned black. It was really kind of bizarre. I was kind of jealous of my dad. He had a 5 o'clock shadow every afternoon. He'd come home and he'd have his hair would be all black, his chin would be all black, and he'd have to shave again, that kind of thing. It's really kind of bizarre. And before he shaved, 2 or 3 times a week, then all of a sudden he goes off to war and he comes back with this heavy beard and this black hair. And people would comment on the fact that it didn't look like my mom and dad should be together. Why? Because my dad had black hair and my mom had this reddish brown hair. It was really kind of bizarre. But social pressure is really strong, can be really strong. And for that reason, of course, they felt really kind of strange. That all these people were giving them a hard time because of the color of their hair. As bizarre as that seems. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm ruining you. You're trying to eat healthy and I'm trying to feed you Snickers. I apologize. We'll move this right over here. So I'm the villain in this scenario. I apologize. I don't mean to be the villain. I want to be the good guy. Research that sought to determine whether North Americans or Japanese liked similar or dissimilar strangers showed that the North Americans had stronger attraction to similar strangers than the Japanese. In some studies, Japanese show a similarity attraction effect as well, but it is consistently weaker than North American effect. And that's because North Americans are so diversified and Japanese are so homogenous. The Japanese, there's 98% of the people living in Japan are Japanese. Only 2% are anything else. And a lot of that 2% are Koreans. So they're still Asians. So Americans, of course, in order for us just to survive, we need to embrace strangers. We can't just live by ourselves, as odd as that seems. And a good example would be the shooting that took place on Sunday at the church just north of San Antonio. Yeah. This guy was mad, and he was mad at his in-laws, and that's why he went in there and fired 450 rounds from a military rifle. Can you imagine how much damage that did?
Was it an automatic or a semi-automatic?
It was an AR-556. It was a Ruger AR-556. So it was the same thing as an M16.
Oh, okay.
Did the in-laws die?
They weren't there. He killed his grandmother-in-law. Yeah, I know. This is bizarre.
And here the mother-in-law actually got text messages from him
Yeah,
prior to that.
right.
And she didn't even say anything.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of strange. Okay, so we as Americans, we need to learn how to live together. And of course, that's one of the reasons why we are more open to these things than the Japanese would be. They live in a homogeneous society. Well, we're going to find out a lot of other things about these people. Researchers have discovered that the most frequent topic of conversation is gossip about other people. So we gossip about other people. We're all talking about Michelle. Did you see what Michelle had on yesterday? things. But we could, I mean, we could talk about these kinds of things. Of course, we're all friends in here, so we don't talk about each other. You probably talk about me all the time, and that's okay. I'm assuming that it's only good things. You like my bolo ties. Okay, I live in a fantasy world, so don't bring me out of my fantasy world. Studies that track people's happiness over time find that their happiest times are when they are with other people. This is important. People's most emotionally wrenching experiences involve the breakup of relationships, and I talked about all the suicides that happened after I left at Fort Belknap, as sad as that is. Communal sharing, the members of a group emphasize their common identity rather than consider their idiosyncrasies. So we're looking for commonalities. Somebody is the same height. Somebody likes the same baseball team I like. You know, I'm trying to make connections with people. Chris wears a San Francisco Giants hat. My best friend in the whole wide world, but we're the only two Giants fans that exist. In communal sharing, every person is treated the same. Each has the identical rights and privileges as every other member of the group. The idea is communal sharing is equality among all the members of the group. So what we're looking for is commonality. We're not looking for idiosyncrasies. We're not looking for inequalities. We're looking for sameness, and that's how we create our friendship groups. We're not looking for somebody that's superior to us. We're not looking for somebody that's inferior to us. We're looking for equals, because it's easier to get along with people that are the same as we are. And that's known as communal sharing. Authority ranking involves the inequality of relationships that people share. Within authority ranking relationships, people are linearly ordered along a hierarchical social dimension. And of course we do that. Working here, of course, there are people that are making a lot more money than I am. People that can tell me what to do. And of course I can rank those select individuals. I know exactly who they are. I had to talk to the vice president this morning to get somebody to unlock the door. And she tried to talk to me like an equal, and of course I recognize her as a vice president and somebody who has a fence around her property, because they build fences for people in the administration. As a faculty member, do I get a damn fence? Hell no, I don't get a fence at all. It's a red cedar fence too.
That's a stupid one. Well, see, what's crazy about it is the person who lived there before had the exact same fence that is around there right now. But when he left, he took the exact same fence with him. And then they built that exact same fence around it.
Another fence, a brand new fence for the new person.
Mm-hmm. So the better the rate, the higher the
That's exactly true. You ever see the fence that the president's got? Oh my God. He's got a gate on his fence, so he can stop you from driving in his driveway, which is only this long, but I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's okay. It's ranking. It has to do with authority. So we have authority ranking. We see these things. Potentially, I dress pretty damn good. I dress pretty nice. You know, I could be somebody in authority, but I'm not. Which I have no authority whatsoever. Everybody bosses me around, which is kind of tragic, I guess. Anyway, so in an organization like this, it's really difficult to find friends because you're always authority ranking. So it's hard to find friends in a hierarchical business like this one.
I'm the only one in this college that is from a different tribe that doesn't have partner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only one
Oh, you're the only one?
from a different tribe.
I know you're from, but you're married now.
Yeah,
Sarah keeps saying that.
But still,
What does that mean?
where do I rank?
Well, if you talk to the people up at the CDS, is that Dene Studies? Those guys, they say that Dene aren't supposed to marry outside the club.
Oh my
So you're a villain. And you've never recognized it until today. I just pointed it out to you that you're a villain. You've stolen one of their studs or something, I don't know. As important as all that is. Sarah was given a hard time because she married another. By people up in Danae's studies. Other people in Danae's studies, they don't agree with that. But there are people that will tell you that you've done wrong.
Why? I mean, like, ain't marrying, remember the whole clan thing?
Yeah, I know, that's
That
why the
works
clans,
then.
it's the clans. We both understand.
Actually, my dad had the same problem with my grandpa when they first.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. My grandpa didn't know anything to do with my dad until we finally connected somehow.
So what's wrong with your dad?
Well, my dad was white, so my mom was not from my dad didn't know anything. Or my grandpa didn't know anything about that.
It could be worse than Dave. Chris is he's right. I'm sorry to hear about your father.
Oh, yeah, no worries. So similar to that.
I got a smile out of Brandon. At least I got a smile out of Brandon. Okay, this is a good day. Okay, I'm doing really well. Okay, what happens next? People with higher ranking have prestige and privileges that those with lower ranking do not have. A lot of stuff that's going on right now with Donald Trump. Of course, his popularity is just going down the tubes, as strange as that is. Why? Because he's arrogant. Where in the world did he get his arrogance? Well, he's always been wealthy. Wealthy people don't understand the rest of us. I mean, it's really kind of bizarre.
Today is the anniversary of our voting election, where we voted him in. So they done a study poll to see if all these people that voted him in still agree with him. Only 44% agree, 26% disagree. No, 26% of them are like, they don't care, they should have just stayed home. And then the other part is like, they still kind of agree.
Yeah.
What was this? What voting poll is this?
I don't know, it was on
Pricey.
Good Morning America this morning. I watched Good Morning.
MSNBC. All those fake news stations that they kind of interesting. I told you the story of my daughter and her son, my grandson, and the father of the child, who I refer to sometimes as the bastard, sometimes as the jackass. But they just went to court over the summer, and she won. And it pissed him off because he comes from a wealthy family. And wealthy people aren't used to losing, they're used to winning. Okay, so one of the things that he has done, he put it in the agreement that we would have to fly the child into Chicago. Well, as it turns out, flying the child into Chicago costs $800 more every time we have to fly than flying him from the local airport. And the reason he did that is because he's trying to punish us for beating him, for winning. It's really kind of fascinating watching this guy interact. Because he's not wealthy. He's not wealthy, but both of his parents are wealthy. So he was raised with privilege. And when he can't get what he wants, then he wants to punish the person that of course, that won. And so he's trying to punish us. And we're not wealthy people at all. And so $800 every time we have to fly the kid down there, that's a lot of money. That's about like $1,000, my God. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to punish us for what happens. And this all has to do with ranking, of course. Does money mean that you're better? Well, in the Protestant ethic, the more money you have, the more blessed by God you are. So yeah, I guess it does. As confusing as all that is. So anyway, now we're gonna fly him into the cheap place anyway. This son of a bitch. We don't care what he says we have to do. We're gonna go ahead and do it, and then get the kid over there one way or another. And he can go suck on a lemon for all I care. Bastard. Now you have to fly him into Chicago. Chicago's 2.5 hours away from where we live. So we'd have to drive there, and then the tickets are more expensive. So, subordinates are often entitled to receive protection and care from those above them, and of course this is one of the reasons why people voted for Trump. Trump put himself in a position of authority, and because he put himself in a position of authority, people thought that he would take care of them. And they believed all the promises he made. And some of the promises he made, he's going to cut in on unemployment, which he actually did. He's going to cut taxes, which is really kind of interesting. If you look at his tax plan, and we won't discuss his tax plan, but if you look at his tax plan, guess who gets off with lots more or less money? Who's going to be making all the money off of this new tax plan?
The rich people.
The rich people are, yeah. It looks like the middle class is going to take the shorts again.
Well, I think with us, I think what we look forward to is the earned child tax credit.
Right.
And in that tax plan, it said that it would be increased.
Right.
So if it's increased by, say, another couple thousand, then shoot, I'll vote for him.
There you go. You're going to vote for him again. Well, the other thing that you need to look at is
Wait, did you say again?
I mean, no.
the state tax credit. In the old days, you got to deduct that. The taxes you paid to the state. You got to deduct that from your federal taxes. And now they're going to take that away. Yeah. Sure. Of course. Look, they're going to give you something, but at the same time they're going to take it away. So in the end, you're not making any more money. So they're taking away your state tax credit.
I think state tax only like a couple hundred.
Oh,
State
no. Well, it all
taxes
depends.
are like
If you're paying,
75 or 100.
if you're paying the feds a couple $1,000, then you're paying the state a couple $1,000. That's usually the way it works. It all depends on what state you live in. Some states don't have state taxes, like Texas. So they're going to make off like bandits because they always make off like bandits because they're thieves, that's why. But Montana doesn't have any state tax either. Yes, you
So,
do. Well, you don't have any sales tax, that's what you don't
We
have.
don't have sales tax.
Yeah.
If you use your ID from there in another state, can you not get taxed?
No, they still tax you.
Oh, because you're in the other.
Yeah, you're in that state. And maybe you made your money in that state, so, yeah, that's not the way it works. Anyway, so you care about one thing. So you have to be very careful about that tax plan. You need to read the whole damn thing. Yeah, he's going to do away with inheritance tax too. But inheritance tax only kicks in if you inherit more than $500,000. Okay, so he's going to do away. I know. So what do you care about inheritance tax? Well, the reason you should care about inheritance tax is because now, if you're a billionaire, you don't have to pay inheritance tax. And so all of that tax money that we used to get from the billionaires for dying, we're not going to get it anymore. So where are they going to make it up? Whoops, they have to find it someplace. And this only affects like 1% of the population. People that inherit more than $500,000.
If I'm not paying for the wall, then I'm okay.
Okay. Well, we will. Okay, we'll find out about the wall. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The lower ranked members earn less money or are allowed fewer privileges and are obliged to follow the orders of those above them. Asymmetry underlies all authority-ranked relationships. We are in a asymmetric authority-ranked relationship in this classroom. I have all the authority. I get to decide what you guys have to do. Okay, so it's asymmetrical. You guys have no power and I have all the power in the world. Of course, I try to be as flexible as I possibly can. But some people are very authoritarian. If they say that they want something turned in by 12 o'clock and you bring it in at 12:01, they're not going to accept it. I mean, they're that authoritarian. They're trying to teach you responsibility. I just want you to learn this shit, okay? And whether you do it whether you do it all at the end of the semester, I don't really care. It doesn't really matter to me. I just want you to accumulate this information. That's all I care about. There's something wrong with me, obviously. What else are we going to do? Oh, another basic relational structure is equality matching based on the idea of balance and reciprocity. People keep track of what is exchanged in equivalent terms. So I've given you guys candy, now you have to give me something. Is that the way it works? Well, if that were true, and I don't really care, because I'm generous. See, I'm showing my generosity by giving you candy. Well, everybody but Andre, of course, because she's eating pistachios, which is a much healthier snack. I agree. It's a much healthier snack. Good for you. You're my hero. For lunch, I'm going to have an apple, one of those fruit cups, a protein bar, and then another fruit cup, and then another apple. Isn't that a healthy lunch? 2 apples, 2 fruit cups, and a protein bar. I know there's no fat in it at all.
Sounds like a lot of sugar.
I hope so. Otherwise, I'll fall asleep this afternoon. While equality matching is probably the least familiar relational structure to Westerners, it is quite common in many cultures around the world. Exchanging Christmas cards is an example of equality matching. You send me a Christmas card, I have to send you a Christmas card. Taking turns, that's very common in Western world, that's equality matching. Exchanging dinner invitations, and of course, I have to tell you now that I ate over at Sarah's house and she hasn't eaten at my house, so I know I owe her one. In essence, I owe her. So if she ever tells you anything negative about me, it's probably because I haven't fed her. She's got so many strange dietary restrictions. I don't know if I could cook for her and Jerry. Jerry has dietary restrictions as well. Carpooling. How many times do I drive? Who pays for the gas? You know, that kind of stuff. These are examples of equality matching in the Western world. Not a whole lot of them. We don't have nearly as much as other people do. All features, market pricing is another type of relational structure. All features of benefits that are exchanged can be reduced to a single underlying dimension, usually money. So if I buy you a Christmas present, then now you have to buy me a Christmas present of an equal amount of money. And of course, Sheldon complains about this. That's why he hates gift giving, doesn't want to give Christmas presents, doesn't want to give birthday presents, because then he would feel obliged to give a matching present to somebody else. People expect to ultimately receive something equivalent to what they have given. Now, if you remember the first season of Big Bang Theory, Penny gave Sheldon a napkin with a autograph of Leonard Nimoy, remember? Okay. And he had bought all of these baskets, all these gift baskets, and he was trying to figure out whatever she gave him, he was going to give her an equal gift basket. And then she gave him the autograph of Leonard Nimoy, so he gave her all the gift baskets, every single one of them, big one, the small one. Okay. And then it wasn't enough. He knew it wasn't enough, so what did he do? He had to hug her. He gave her a hug. He actually had to touch it. Oh my God, he touched Penny. You know, as strange as that is. So we're always thinking in terms of cost. How much did this cost? Everything has to be equal, and this is known as market pricing. We do this with all kinds of stuff. So if you have a friend that gives you something, then you want to give them a gift very similar to that. When I broke up with my first wife, she had given birth to 2 children. My daughter was 2.5 years older than my son. And we broke up. We were trying to break up for about 1.5 years, and eventually it took. In between there, she stabbed me a couple of times, but that's because she wanted to leave really bad. Okay, so killing me would be one way to get away from it, if you notice. Okay, that makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that my son was very young when she first left. He was only 9 months old, so he had no clue what was going on. He just knew that mommy wasn't there anymore. And now I took him, instead of him getting to play at home, I took him to daycare and he had to play at daycare. So that's all we knew. That, in fact, that there was a German lady at daycare and she was a Nazi. She was the meanest lady in the world and she potty trained him. You know, you will sit on that potty until you poop. You know, one of those kind of things. You will never poop in your pants again. You know, it scared the shit out of shit. Well, it scared the shit out of it, actually. Anyway, okay. So that's fine. The old lady's gone. I've got 2 kids, and she became a holiday mother. You've heard of holiday fathers that only have any interact with their children on holidays. She became a holiday mom. So she took the kids on Easter. She's the one that had them on Halloween, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So at Christmas, of course, she would buy Christmas presents for the kids. She wasn't very wealthy, of course, but she would buy Christmas presents for the kids. So the first Christmas, she bought my daughter a Barbie dream house. Barbie dream house, which was relatively expensive, like 50 or 60 bucks. And she bought my son a squirt gun, 59 cents. She bought him a package of soldiers, another 59 cents. She bought it from the dollar store. Okay, so she gave, I know, so you're feeling it too, aren't you? Okay, so she gives him this cheap crap that broke down in a matter of minutes, and she gave my daughter this expensive dollhouse. Barbie doll, yeah. On my son's birthday, she gave him presents, and she gave my daughter presents. On my daughter's birthday, she just gave my daughter presents. So, you know, this is market pricing. So the whole, and of course, this is killing my son. He's only 2.5 years old. You know, this is killing him. He's getting this cheap crap that lasts for 30 minutes, and my daughter's getting all this really nice stuff. So how does that make him feel? How does that make me feel? I see that she's not treating the 2 children equally. And of course, sometimes they go away with her. And she does whatever she does, I don't know. And then they come back and he's kind of sad. So here I am, I'm watching this whole process, and it's destroying me. So what do I do? Do I tell the crazy bitch to either buy them the same thing or get out of their lives? Can I do that? And if I do, who's the villain in this scenario? No, this is a tough one. I didn't resolve the problem until I got married to Karen. And then Karen wrote her a letter and said, if you can't treat the 2 kids the same, I couldn't do this. I couldn't do it, but she could. And she wrote her a letter and said, if you can't treat the 2 kids the same, then just leave both of them alone. And that's what she did. She didn't interact with them after that. Of course, we were in Germany at the time, so it was really kind of bizarre. Isn't that a tragedy? Even Brandon sees what a tragedy that is. I mean, that's really tragic that she couldn't treat, and of course, eventually they both grew up, and guess which one of them had the most trouble with women? There's a surprise for you. Which one was it? Must have been my son, since we're talking about women. Okay. But my daughter, well, she had trouble too, because her birth mother died. But my son, he couldn't trust women. Forever. He's got a girlfriend now.
So are you saying like market pricing is like with children, you know, it could leave a big impact?
We put a value on everything.
Like with my niece, okay, this past week she got a phone and her phone was $250. Well, her dad just walked out, literally just walked out. And then they haven't been communicating, so he gives me this phone to give to her, and he says, tell her she can only contact me from 8 to 5. And I turned my phone off after that, because the new woman
Right.
gets extremely psycho, you
Of course.
know.
Of course she does.
Is that like market pricing too?
Market pricing has to do with, so at Christmas, Jeff's opening presents, and Chris's opening presents, and Jeff got 7 and Chris got 8. And now Jeff's upset because he got one less gift than Chris did. Of course, and then the parents will say, well, yeah, but if your presents are worth a lot more money. That's what the parents will say, so that the two of them don't feel so bad. And then Chris is pissed off because he has 8 presents with their cheaper presents.
Oh, Chris is a crybaby.
I know he is.
Just wants everything.
I know, that's a problem, isn't it? So that's what market pricing is. And kids do that, adults do that, of course. What did I get for my birthday? Well, I didn't get anything for my birthday. Nobody remembers my birthday.
So I guess what I.
But I'm the patriarch. I mean, how can
When
people?
was your birthday?
October 12th.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm 68 years old. I'm 68 years old. I can barely move. Wait till you see me walk downstairs.
Well, look at Wilson. He's what, 90?
84.
Oh, is he?
He's only 84. People normally feel some degree of freedom to move openly between relationships, and this is known as relational mobility. Some people have high relational mobility. They feel that they aren't bound by old relationships and are able to start new ones at will. We see women that really complain about this when the man seems to be moving on. Of course, they're still grieving over the relationship, and now she's pissed off because he has moved on before she has moved on. I know, as odd as that may seem. So some people have high relational mobility. People with high relational mobility, a lot of times they're more attractive. So they have more flexible. I know, this seems kind of strange. So it isn't just the fact that it's a guy.
Or easy.
Easy is another way you could say it, I guess, because they're easy. Sure, they're trying to drown their grief in sex.
Yeah.
With sex, okay. But it's meaningless sex, so not important. Or maybe it is important. Other people feel more restricted in their relationships. They have low relational mobility. Their commitments and obligations to their old relationships are so great that they are controlled by them, and they don't feel the freedom to form new relationships. They view relationships as stable and lifelong that provide both benefits and costs in order to maintain them. And of course, this is the biggest problem that I had when I had children with that lady. I figured that it was a lifelong relationship, and when it broke up, it took me a long time to get over it, much longer than it took her, because she moved out of the house into somebody else's house. And here I am taking care of the kids all by myself, and here she is, she's shacked up with some other guy. It wouldn't have been so bad except the other guy was a friend of mine. Was a friend of mine. Was is the operative word here, as in past tense. How could anybody do this to somebody else? Well, if you've ever been around military people, you know that it happens all the time. And military people are probably the worst. I think it's called hound dogging, isn't it? I know, it's terrible. It's terrible. I had a student back up in Fort Belknap. She had a very flexible relationship. But when she was in a relationship with a guy, she was focused on that guy. And of course, everything was fine. But if she broke up with that guy, it was like the next day she's hooking up with somebody else. She got in a fight with her boyfriend one night, and he took off. And she said, you know, there were 5 guys that knocked on my door. Like everybody in the county knew that she'd broken up with this guy, and everybody that wanted a shot at her, they all knocked on her door. It was the first guy that she accepted. It was really kind of funny. Not that funny.
What's her last name?
I'm not gonna tell you what her last name is.
It's a stick one.
No. This lady is actually Nakota from Fort Peck, so.
Oh,
But she was living on Fort Belknap. Her dad was from Fort Belknap and her mom was from Fort Peck.
Don't tell us.
I'm not gonna tell you. She's happily married now. Like I said, when she was with a guy, she didn't mess around, but my God, as soon as she broke up with that guy, it was like everybody and their cousin was knocking on her door. Literally, everybody and their cousin. I don't know how the message got out. Evidently, they saw him away from her, so they decided to move in. Give it a shot. You never know. Relationships in low relational mobility situations are not always positive. Some people really don't get along with each other, and this happens with marital relationships. Sometimes mom and dad just don't get along. It is not an option to decide that they will not engage with one another. They will continue to have a relationship that, though it might be fraught with negative feelings, this is what some people have problems with their in-laws. I've never gotten along with any of my in-laws. I've been married 3 times and I've had 3 sets of in-laws, and none of them liked me, as strange as that seems. So it was really kind of odd. So I had a bad relationship with my in-laws. It sounds like the guy that shot up the church on Sunday, it was the fact he was fighting with his in-laws. He was also an abusive husband and an abusive father. So he was beating his wife and he was beating his kid. And these were the in-laws from that marriage. I don't know if he was still with this lady or not. But he was trying to kill off his in-laws, is what he was trying to do. So why in the world did he just, I mean, you don't have to talk to your in-laws, do you? Do you?
You do, especially if you marry another baby. You do.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I thought the son doesn't talk to the mother-in-law.
I thought that's a pattern.
No, you know what? It's not a whole, and it's also black too.
You don't talk to the mother-in-law?
The son, or the man doesn't talk to the mother-in-law.
It's always my mother-in-laws that I've had the most trouble with. Always. Father-in-laws didn't talk at all. Of course, they knew that I was having sex with their daughters.
The crows?
So they didn't want to have anything to do with me.
The
But the
crows
mothers.
are like that.
I'm sorry?
Oh, the crows are like that too. But they don't talk. The
They
dog
don't
or the
talk.
woman don't talk to her father.
See, that would solve everything.
Oh, and you know what? My sister was telling me that, well, her and her husband been married for 30 years, and she has never ever talking to her or spoke to her father-in-law until 3 months ago. They finally had a conversation.
Oh, is that right?
She said she about just fell over and died, you know.
Oh man, I wish we had those taboos in my culture, damn it. Maybe I would have, well, maybe probably not. My wife's mother hated me. My current wife's mother hated me. As Americans, we average 20.76 friends per person. How about that? As Americans. Now, we are different. We're not the same as other people. People in Hong Kong, they average a network of 13.23 friends. So that's a collectivist country. It gets worse. Now, this is really kind of strange. Remember, we're Americans. And we have a lot of superficial friendships. Yes, that is true. But at least we're friendly with a lot of different people. In Hong Kong, not so much. Very crowded city, 13.23 friends. That makes a lot of sense. The Germans. Germans are Western people, yet their friendship network is only 12.75 friends. We have 8 more friends than they do as Americans. So if you were going to high school in Germany, you would have a smaller network of friends than in the United States. As odd as this sounds. What the hell's wrong with the Germans? Are they different from us? Evidently, they don't have any friends.
What if they don't have like that German, they're German through their bloodline, but they're not, they've never lived in Germany or anything, can they still just inherit that German mentality?
Yeah, but you have to live in a German community. It's cultural. It's very, very cultural. So I have German ancestry, and I don't act like a German. But my uncle did, and he was a first generation German. He came over with his parents, and he actually spoke German, but he was a mean son of a bitch. He's kind of a mean guy. So what, your dad's white, right? Okay, so what,
As far as I know, we're German. His side's German, as far as I know.
does he seem German to you?
No.
No, he's too friendly to be a German. You can see how unfriendly the Germans are. Oh, they only have 12.75 friends.
Well, I don't know, I made him clean his room and got
Well,
It was already.
he'll start exterminating people, and you got to be careful. The Germans. A common reaction heard among many international people after their first encounters with Americans is how friendly we seem. Compared with other people from other cultures, Americans have rather casual attitudes toward forming friendships. And for that reason, they actually, they used to talk about the ugly American. It was because we were so arrogant. But the reality is, we'll talk to just about anybody. So we're a lot friendlier than other individuals, especially the Germans. Germans had a lot of trouble controlling Europe during World War II. If you remember, the Germans invaded Poland in 1939, and then they conquered France in 1940. Well, in essence, they took over the entire continent. But they had a hell of a time controlling people. There was a lot of resistance against them. And the reason is because they're such SOBs. They have a really difficult time getting along with people. Far more difficult than we as Americans do. And for that reason, Americans around the world are considered extremely friendly. That and the fact that we tend to be generous. In collectivistic context, an important aspect of friendship is to provide each other with advice, and this advice is frequently offered regardless of whether one's friend wants it or wants to receive it or not. So we give people advice. However, as Americans, we don't do this nearly as much as other people do. Unsolicited advice is common in a variety of collectivistic cultures, such as Turkey and Colombia. It seems to be especially prevalent in Russia. Now we're going to start talking about the Russians. And what I want you to think about is this whole Russian collusion thing. Why in the world would the Russians care about our elections? Why in the world were they so adamant? Look what they did. They set up troll farms where they harassed us on Facebook and Snapchat and Twitter. I mean, it was so bizarre. Why would they do this kind of stuff? Are they really trying to control the United States? They're weaker than we are. Why in the world would they want to try to control us? What's going on? It has to do with the Russian personality. It is different from the personality we have in the United States. We are open people. We talk about stuff all the time. We talk about our ugly points. And of course, other people don't ever want to mention the bad things about their country. But as Americans, we do. We're just that open, as strange as that is. And that's one of the reasons why we have so many friends. We have to remember, we have 20.76 friends. The Germans have 12.75 friends. 8 fewer friends in their networks than we do. So, as Americans, we're able to be friends with everybody in the room. Germans are selective. They will be far more selective. The Russians are fascinating people. According to BBC journalist James Rogers, you can't say mind your own business in Russian. There is no phrase for mind your own business. You can translate the phrase literally, but the concept is not well understood. They don't understand. So in Russia, people are always telling you what to do. They're always bossing you around. I know, this gets really weird, doesn't it? As Americans, we mind our own business. A study by Chinsova, Dutton, and Vaughn in 2012, looking at unsolicited advice among Americans and Russians, found that Russians were twice as likely to have given unsolicited advice. The amount of advice given by Americans was more likely to be contingent on whether it was requested. So Americans only give advice if people ask them for advice. But Russians, they will tell you what to do because they're Russian and it's part of their personality. The amount of advice given by Russians was unaffected by whether or not it was requested or not. So if they think you should do something, they are going to tell you to do something. If they think you should break up with somebody, they're just going to tell you to break up with that person. They're not going to ask you if you want their advice or not. They're just going to tell you, break up with that son of a bitch. In Russia, a big part of friendship seems to be to let your friends know how you think they should be leading their lives differently. And that's part of friendship. I know. That would break up a friendship in the United States in a nanosecond. People telling you how to live your life? Oh my God. But not in Russia. All these guys have red hair, okay? But it's all dyed. I just found these pictures of Russians. But they look so Russian, don't they? Except for the hair, they all look so Russian. Remember, the Russians don't smile nearly as much as we do in the United States.
They just look cold.
It's cold up there, that's why. It's kind of like the Blackfeet. You know how cold you guys get? You guys never smile? When Ghanaians and Americans were asked whether having a lot of friends was good, Ghanaians said that it was foolish to have lots of friends. Friendship to the Ghanaians involves obligations, both financial and social. Thus, too many friends could make you a pauper with no control over your life. So if they call you up and say, let's go out tonight, you have to go out. You don't have a choice. No, I'm just going to sit at home and watch television. That ain't an option. If they want you to buy a round, you buy a round, whether that's the last penny you had. By the way, I only have 85 cents. That's all the money I have. So I don't have any other money. I'm broke. I got 85 cents. So who's going to buy me lunch? I'm just kidding. I got that. Anyway, okay. Research conducted with Westerners has shown that physically attractive people have a number of more positive life outcomes than those that are less physically attractive. And these outcomes extend across a broad array of domains in ways that may seem patently unfair. Now, the bizarre thing about being attractive, we all think we know how attractive we are. But the bizarre thing about being attractive is pretty people don't realize that they're getting shit, okay? They don't realize that they're being given grades. They don't realize that they're being given a job that makes a lot more money. This is bizarre. So all it takes is being attractive. Damn it. And being attractive in the United States not only has to do with your facial features, it also has to do with height for men. Not especially for women, but especially for men. So being attractive, the Miss America syndrome. We used to talk about the Miss America syndrome, but now they've done more and more research with this. They started doing research with this back in the 1950s. A guy took a yearbook from West Point, and he tried to predict which individuals became high-ranking officers and which individuals didn't. Guess who became high-ranking individuals? The attractive people and the tall people. The taller and more attractive you were, the more likely that you were going to become a general. So if we look at all the generals in the United States military, how many short, little, squat, ugly guys are there? Zip it. None. This guy is lucky if he ever can become a captain, let alone a major or a colonel or a general. Okay, so I have a wife who is a colonel, was retired as a colonel in the United States Air Force, and she was up for a star. She lost out to a tall, skinny lady, blonde. My wife had red hair at the time. She doesn't really live right there, she just died in Israel. So my wife has select attributes, which is what attracted me to her. She has a cute face. She's not pretty. Well, she's cute. She has a cute face. She's got a large chest. I hate to say that, but it could be that her rank has to do with her full body, her full figure, because she has a large chest. I know, that's tragic, isn't it? So what does that have to do with military bearing, right? What does that have to do with, well, she's good at her job as well. And she had to be good at her job. But I think it was potentially her chest that was potentially a deciding factor. She's relatively short, relatively squat, but she's full figured. She's a full figured lady.
Like Private Benjamin?
That was Goldie Hawn. Is she full figured?
Well, she got promoted to.
Oh, because she was pretty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to a skydiving.
Right. Because she was, yeah,
And
exactly.
then the general tried to make out with her, and she
Exactly.
didn't have to jump if she made out with him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
That's sexual harassment.
I know it's sexual harassment. But who's sexually harassing who? Yeah, that was sexual harassment. You're absolutely correct. Okay, so, I mean, this is a reality. So they've done more studies with attracted people. Guess what attracted people get? Everything. Anything they want. Essays that are believed to have been written by attractive authors are evaluated more positively than ones believed to have been written by a less attractive author. Really? Are you kidding me? I have to grade papers. I've got like 187 papers to grade. So what am I going to do? I'm going to give all the females high grades and all the males low grades? Probably. As bizarre as that seems, these two individuals are the same person, by the way. And these two individuals are actually the same person. Yeah, they're actually the same person. America, I can't remember her last name, but she used to have her own television show. Ugly Betty, I think, was a television show. This is her as Ugly Betty, and that's the way she looks when she's all dolled up. Okay. Attractive politicians get more votes than unattractive ones. So who's the pretty one in this picture? Who got the most votes in the last election?
Trump isn't pretty.
He didn't get more votes.
Oh.
He lost by 3 million votes. Of course, then he said that actually they got the same number of votes because there were 3 million people who voted who shouldn't have voted. They voted illegally. Yeah, so yeah, Hillary is more attractive than Donald. Attractive children are rated as smarter and better behaved by their teachers. When I was in the service, we went over to Germany, and my wife took my daughter in and introduced her to her teachers. I took my son in and introduced him to his teachers. My wife at the time was a captain. I was a staff sergeant. So when it came time to put kids in the talented and gifted program, both my kids have the same IQ. They have exactly the same IQ. My son is a little bit more introverted than my daughter, but that's the only other deciding factor. Guess which one of them made the tag program and which one of them didn't? My daughter made the tag program because they thought that she was the daughter of an officer. My son didn't because, well, they didn't even care because he was the son of an enlisted person. And because of that, she got into the tag program with all of these officers' kids. I know. But the reality was that my wife, she's not even part of my wife's genetic structure. She's their stepmom. Yeah. Because they thought that she was the daughter of an officer, she's the one that made the tag program. As strange as, and it pissed her off. It pissed my daughter off. She's been fighting ever since. She's kind of an aggressive person. Attractive MBA grads earn more money than less attractive MBA grads. So which one gets the best, which one got the best job? The lady on the left or the lady on the right?
The taller.
The taller, yeah, height. And the blonde one, yeah. Does she really have blonde hair? Probably not. If you look at her eyebrows, they're kind of brown. Attractive criminals get lighter sentences than less attractive criminals?
No.
Really?
What about Ted Bundy?
I know, he was pretty. They tried to let him off. I know, he'd murdered all those ladies. He kept escaping. Why in the world would they let him? I mean, this is a guy that has done these horrible, heinous things. Why would they even let him alone so that he could escape? But they did. In a courthouse in Alabama. And he escaped. So the prettier you are, the more likely you're going to be able to get away with it. From an early age, we learned that attractive people have more desirable characteristics than unattractive ones, such as when we learn of Cinderella's kindness and her beauty in contrast to her evil and ugly stepsisters. And of course, Disney did it the best. And of course, they're ripping her clothes off. Well, not really. They're ripping her clothes away, but they didn't rip them off. Some people refer to this as the tyranny of the beautiful, and it has been explained by our ability to discern beauty almost immediately after meeting someone. We can tell how pretty somebody is the very first time we meet them. And we give them shit if they are pretty. And we give them nothing if they aren't. If they're short, ugly, and we don't give them jack. If they're tall and attractive, we give them stuff. We will often assume that they have other positive features as well, and this is known as the halo effect. This is really kind of interesting. This is the most decorated combat veteran of World War II. He's actually the most highly decorated veteran of in U.S. history. Won the Congressional Medal of Honor. He had like 3 Bronze Stars, 3 Silver Stars for bravery. He had 2 Bronze Stars. He had all these Purple Hearts. Look at his face. Fairly attractive man. His name was Audie Murphy. Look him up somehow. The only thing he had going against him, he had a baby face. They called him the baby face killer. He was ruthless. He was not very tall. But he was, as you can see, he was fairly attractive. You can see Audie Murphy if you watch old movies, because he became an actor after World War II. He became an actor. So he became an actor, as curious as that is. This guy was in jail for breaking probation. He had a gun, and he was a felon. He had a weapon. So they threw him in jail. They put his face up on Facebook for some reason. He was arrested in Stockton, California. They put it on Facebook. Somebody saw it and fell in love with him and it went viral. This Facebook page from the Stockton Police Department. And it was because of him. They called him the Blue-Eyed Bandit, because he's so pretty. Guess where he is today?
Modeling.
Modeling. Yeah, he's modeling. He's 33 years old. He's got 3 kids. He had a wife. He had a wife. Doesn't have a wife anymore. The Brits are in